Hey, everybody. This is Steve Tarter, another edition of Tarter Sauce. And with me today, a special guest, Eng Seng Loh, I guess your first title is founder and CEO of Tarter Strategies,
That's
which
correct.
is a consulting firm. Would that be correct?
Yes,
In Peoria?
Yes, it is. It's just my outfit that I put together to just house all of the activities that I decided to embark on since my retirement from Caterpillar.
And you spent how many years at Caterpillar?
About 20 years.
20 years. And doing what?
I first came into Caterpillar as an economist in the business intelligence group. Spent about 9-10 years in that function in various capacity within the economics group. And then I segue over into the more strategic support areas, including risk management, and that's where I ended up my career.
Okay. We're talking with Eng Seng today about an article we ran in our paper on Sunday, the Journal Star, about Nexmobi. And I'll say that Nexmobi is Nexmobi. How do you define that group?
Well, the Nexmobi organization is really a nonprofit organization, Steve, that I put together and have a lot of support from other stakeholders in the greater Peoria area to help drive economic development in the area, bring more companies into the area, grow more jobs, and hopefully also lead to high income and future growth for everybody in the area that we all live in.
Well, no one's going to disagree with that. Obviously, that's what Peoria needs. But I think the exciting thing is there's a consortium being built that looks to make Peoria, the Peoria area, I should say, a testing ground for autonomous vehicles.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct. This is really the starting point. I think ultimately what we would like to do is to grow the overall region, not just Greater Peoria, but really the I-74 corridor into a vibrant, innovative hub that would attract growth and more jobs and income for everybody in the central area.
And, you know, the autonomous car, and we hear a lot about. I think people are at various levels with it. We know it's coming, I think, because of the investment made by automakers in the billions. Clearly, that wouldn't be the case if they didn't feel it was, going to be happening. People don't know when, and I think you made a good point in a meeting that we held, you held some weeks ago, that it's going to be probably a phased in.
That's correct.
It won't be one day everyone will be in an autonomous vehicle.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. These are very specialized vehicles. I mean, if you look at the trajectory for how major innovation have occurred, and specifically within the car sector, you can see that electric vehicles, for instance, have been around now for something like 15, 20 years, and it's certainly not the case that we are all driving around in electric vehicles. And so similarly for autonomous cars, these things will be in the testing mode for a fair bit longer. We want to make sure that these vehicles are as safe as possible for everybody, not just for the folks inside these cars, but for the manned vehicles that are going to be working alongside these cars before they become much more pervasive, prevalent. And then there are also a bunch of legal issues around ownership and management of these vehicles that the legal community will also have to figure out around the ownership and operation of these vehicles as well.
The whole business with autonomous vehicles, driverless cars, whatever you want to say, is fascinating because when you get into that discussion, you start talking about how the changes will occur in urban areas, where fundamentally, in the last 50 or more years, the cities have been basically built for cars.
That's right.
We certainly can look at Peoria as an example, parking decks and big lanes running through town with high-speed cars, and that's all down the road going to change.
Yeah, I think it will change depending upon the location and the application of these cars. In big urban areas where space is a tight constraint, the type of autonomous vehicles that will be running will probably be ride-sharing cars, that are going to try to help improve parking situations, congestions, pollution, and things that are really major issues for big crowded cities. But when you talk about suburban areas where it's not necessarily as congested, the use of autonomous cars may be more for convenience, where you may have, let's say, increased adoption by the older members of the population in order to be able to access services and shopping areas, and you may have interested people that just for the convenience sake may want to have autonomous cars take them to work and back. But that wouldn't necessarily be very different from the kind of transportation network and modes that we see today with manned vehicles. And so the impact of autonomous vehicles, robotic vehicles, will likely be different depending upon the environment you're looking at, the density of the population in these different areas.
And I think you made the point some weeks ago that in rural areas, people may hold on to their cars.
Exactly right.
Because of just what you said, that it might be more convenient for them to have that vehicle.
Exactly right.
Truck or whatever it is.
Exactly right.
The whole business with the autonomous testing, let's talk about that a little bit, because a lot of communities, we talked to somebody from the state who talked about how some states are ahead of, it's always a competition, I guess, but California and this place and that place are already busy testing out autonomous vehicles. Arizona and Florida are warm weather places that have lots of good spots to do it. But Illinois is coming, right?
Yep. That's absolutely right. I think the thing that is most interesting about autonomous vehicle, driverless vehicle, is that really is a systematic change to the way vehicles are going to operate in the future. And vehicles are used for so many things, for moving people, for moving goods, and it's such a fundamental part of our everyday life that I think that there is huge scope for us to figure out how best we can play in this space. So just because some cities in some parts of the country have started testing autonomous vehicles some years ahead of us, is absolutely no reason why we should not also look to see how we can best find the right niches for Peoria to be successful in these places. There are so many questions that have to be answered before autonomous vehicles are really very much more prevalent. So many more issues, so many technical as well as business issues, that I think if we are smart enough, we can easily find those profitable niches for us to be successful in.
And this effort to set up Central Illinois as a sort of a hub for this kind of development, for this kind of innovation, that takes a lot of cooperation. And,
That's correct.
You're busy working with some of the players on that one.
That's correct. I'm very happy to say that in the very short amount of time that Nexmobi has been in existence, we have built a very large group of supporters and stakeholders among the local government units. So among our partners are the city of Peoria, the county of Peoria. We have also started to engage the regional government entities, county of Tazewell, Woodford as well. Cities, villages of Morton is certainly very interested in participating. And we've also started to build relationships with nonprofits and universities in the area. And also private companies are coming on board to participate in this overall effort, because I think we all can quite easily see how this could quite easily deliver some really massive benefits to the community over a very long period of time.
And obviously you know this from having worked at Caterpillar for 20 years. We've got two companies here in town, Komatsu and Caterpillar, both who are no strangers to autonomous vehicles. I mean, they've been actually selling them.
That's right.
For many years.
That's right.
Not just last year, but mining. Of course, now it's very specialized mining and so forth. So this might be a place that is right at home with autonomous vehicles.
Absolutely, yes. I think it's very much the case that the autonomous equipment that Caterpillar and Komatsu offers to the mining customers are an unknown achievement among very many members of the public. These companies are the ones that have actually successfully deployed commercial fleets that have proven to be very successful. And so there's a lot of practical experience with the development of autonomous technology in the local area, the local Greater Peoria area. And when you add to that the developing new companies like Autonomous Stuff and others that support autonomous stuff, we really have a strong foundation for doing well in this space. And when you look at the size of Peoria as a medium-sized city, where we have a combination of urban, suburban, and rural spaces within a very short area, it is possible to test autonomous vehicles in different environments at different times of the day without really impacting massively the way people live and move about. If you just think about trying to do this in downtown Chicago during rush hour,
oh boy,
it would be massively more difficult. And then if you try to access rural areas from downtown Chicago, there's another long commute and a long way to go to get there. So Peoria has many advantages that I think we are able to build off of. Not to also forget the fact that we have a large population of very talented engineers that have retired and decided to stay in Peoria that can also be tapped to participate in this effort.
Right, and that's a good point. You mentioned Autonomous Stuff. We should just probably single them out a little bit. Company in Morton, started by Bobby Hambrick in 2010, that's really grown. I think it's tripled in size in that time. They are right there, I think, with software and other developments, engineering side, in the autonomous vehicle movement. I mean, they're obviously, I know in the story that we ran on Sunday, they were saying, Bobby Hambrick was saying, well, we've got people from all over the world that come in to their shop to look at whatever it is they're doing. Most of us wouldn't understand from an engineering standpoint, but so it's good to have that company involved with your consortium.
Absolutely. Bobby Hambrick and Autonomous Stuff are really the key partner to Nexmobi because they are the ones that will have to design, implement, and support all these different autonomous vehicles projects that we hope to bring into the Greater Peoria area. But I think from another perspective, the example of Autonomous Stuff is also very, very important from the standpoint of illustrating what we hope to be doing with the Nexmobi project in general. That it is possible for a very small, highly technical outfit like Autonomous Stuff to be started here in the Greater Peoria area and grow to be as successful as it has been, that we hope to replicate that kind of experiment and that kind of success with other companies coming into the area. So I am quite hopeful that in the years to come, we will have many more examples of such successes.
And that would be a great thing because, I know we're hearing it now more and more. I know the mayor made a point, Mayor Jim Ardis of Peoria made a point in his State of the City address that he talked about innovation because sometimes it's happening right under your nose and you're not always aware. Unless, someone like yourself who knows the players, you're well aware of it. Other people, they think, well, what about Peoria Next? I remember that, was something that carried on, but then I haven't heard about it in a while, but that doesn't mean innovation's not going on.
No, absolutely not. I mean, if you look at the statistics themselves, the most recent set of numbers regarding the number of patents produced on a per capita basis shows that I think Peoria is right up there with the best of the areas. I think we are number 17th in the latest ranking.
Oh.
And so there's a lot of innovative activity that's occurring in the Greater Peoria area. And we have a lot of capabilities that I think we can bring to this particular effort.
Yeah, and sometimes I think and I shouldn't be saying this because as a reporter, we tend to always look at PR as sort of like, oh, they're trying to feed us a bill of goods or something. But sometimes I think the public relations effort needs to be there to tell people, okay, we're not kidding you. Here's what's going on, and here's autonomous stuff. Here's Caterpillar. Here's the group that's assembled to make this happen, and it's right here.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And I think as we talk more with other folks, both within the greater Peoria area and also outside of the greater Peoria area, we are starting to see this greater visibility being of interest to everyone. And the hope is that very quickly they will come to Peoria and start putting money and projects into this area. Now,
I know I'm going to be jumping the gun here because obviously this program has to build and grow, and first of all, there's a grant involved, a federal grant that people might not know, possibly up to $10 million could be awarded by the Department of Transportation. The Peoria is going after, and that would be a big feather in the cap of the whole movement. But one of the things I know I've heard just covering meetings, the warehouse district is progressing nicely in Peoria. It's one of the success stories, I guess you could say, of a otherwise quiet downtown. And one of the questions, or one of the problems, challenges, whatever, is parking. Because now they've reached this point where people want to come down there, but there's not a lot of on-street parking, or at least not enough at certain times. What I'm wondering is, could we see at some point, and again, I'm jumping the gun, I know, an autonomous bus making the rounds in the downtown? Is that something that is feasible?
Yes, I think absolutely. One of the projects that we are looking to get funding for is a people mover system for some of the partners that are looking to come on board the projects and to test precisely the feasibility that such a system could help to ease some of their parking problems. So we're talking to OSF as a primary example to test such a system where during the rush hour part of the day, there'll be certain autonomous vehicles that will be dedicated to taking OSF employees from the parking lot down by the Scottish Rite Cathedral, I think, up to the facilities. And then once the morning rush hour is past, those vehicles can then be deployed to test other community-minded goals, such as perhaps helping underserved or older population living in group homes get access to services that would go to show the benefit that such a system would bring to that section of the public. And then eventually, over time as well, I think the possibility of expanding such routes to include members of the public where it's going to bring more people into a particular area can certainly be explored further.
That's a fascinating thing, so that in different parts of the day, the same vehicles would serve a different use. We're talking with Eng Seng Loh, who's heading up Nexmobi, the autonomous mobility group. I think it's larger than that. It's really looking for general innovation. I mean, is that correct? I mean, you're not focused only on autonomous vehicles. How would you look at that?
Well, within the autonomous vehicle space, there are so many different technologies that are needed to make it effective, ranging from the different equipment needed for the vehicles to see where it is in a particular stretch of road, to interacting with other vehicles, to interacting with the traffic infrastructure, to interacting with people and cars and buildings around that vehicles. And there's so many technologies involved in that there is a lot of potential that you could see players that are wanting to test those different technologies come into the Peoria area to put their improvements in these components into the vehicles. So it's not just necessarily just about the vehicles itself. It could really also be about all the things that are needed to go into the vehicles. And then I think if you look even more expansively, there are a lot of issues that companies may wish to explore that would require them to come and put money into examining different solutions. And certainly we hope that as the autonomous vehicle initiative becomes more a part of Peoria and driving new innovation, that it also kickstarts innovation in other nearby spaces. And we have got certainly very strong innovators in the Ag Lab, innovation going on in the hospital sectors.
Sure.
And as all these different innovation centers of excellence in their respective fields see what's happening, they can see ways to leverage what we do, and so we can then all float upwards together collectively and build a stronger regional innovation center.
My mind is just wandering through some of the things you're saying, because when you talk about a world where maybe at least at first some of the vehicles are autonomous, that makes probably changes in insurance.
Yep.
Probably changes in policing, changes in parking. That ripple effect goes around the community, and testing all those things, or as we get to them, or however it works, it's all going to be needed.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise, it's going to slow things down.
Absolutely, yes. And even to such infrastructure questions as how many more parking spaces do you need? Do you even need the same garage space that you are putting into all the new houses that are being developed? If you are in an urban center and you're primarily relying on ride sharing, you may not even need to build many garages in new developments and just simply free up the space. Parking lots that are now typically found around large box stores may not be needed, or at least not to as large an extent as they are needed. So there are a lot of transportation, city planning questions that start to become very pertinent when autonomous and robotic vehicles are more prevalent. And then there are a lot of changes that are also needed, as you pointed out, Steve, in the legal frameworks and how businesses are conducted, and so on and so forth. So that's why I think Peoria playing in this space is an entirely feasible aspiration, because there's so much going on in this field that we should be able to figure out how to be successful, where the niches we can play.
And I know it's been trite, or at least been overdone, how it plays in Peoria, and if it plays in Peoria, it play anywhere. But Peoria, for many, many years, has been looked on as Middle America, as reflective of the average middle class or the average American. And if that's the case, and I think it still is, I think other communities could also be in that same category. But if that's the case, then what better place to test?
Absolutely, I fully agree.
The three-car garage that is so treasured now may become a sort of a, well, we'll have to rent that space out or something. I mean, of course, this is years away. We understand this is. I think some of us who probably started writing about or hearing about driverless cars started thinking, oh, it'll be like a new line from Detroit. The next one will be driverless, and it's not going to go that way.
No, absolutely
It won't happen that way. It'll be phased in. Because I'm wondering, I don't know if this is before our time, but when the automobile replaced the horse and carriage, you see those old footage of cities in the downtowns, in the early part of the 20th century. There's still horse and carriages.
Yes.
There's a car or two, or maybe they started becoming more numerous, but they coexisted. And the same thing will be probably the case with the next technology overhaul.
Yes. There's a lot of experimentation ongoing, and we're all trying to create the future together. And it's exciting, and I'm sure it's also a little bit nerve-wracking for some, because there are going to be companies that could see themselves as being potentially impacted in a negative way.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
And they are certainly going to worry about how all these different changes will impact them. But on the whole, there will be more opportunities that will open up as well. And similarly for folks, some jobs that may have been part and parcel of the landscape, truck driving as an example,
Right.
May increasingly become less important as more and more autonomous trucks, particularly on-highway driving, for large commercial trucks, become automated and robotic. But there will potentially be many other jobs that will open up because of that, and it's a important, I think, point to remember that for every negative that comes out of it, there'll be many positives as well.
And that's that's historically been the case. I mean, it's happened as we speak, because I'm thinking gas stations that are no longer gas stations have been converted to churches or this or that. I mean, you can see them around town, a flower shop,
Yep.
or whatever it is, because that use was no longer needed. They have too many of them. And we'll go through another case of evolution or just change. If somebody, we're talking with Eng Seng Loh with Nexmobi, which is going to challenge the community, I think it's fair to say that, try to bring it together and bring on a whole new sort of age of innovation in Peoria. I hope that's not too grandiose.
We certainly have been working with a lot of folks, a lot of parties, a lot of state level entities, such as the Illinois Department of Transportation and also the Illinois Autonomous Vehicle Association. I would like to call them out as also state level partners, as well as local government entities to really push for significant and faster progress in this space. I don't know that we want to necessarily pose it as a challenge.
Okay.
I think we are all interested in very similar things. We all want the central Illinois area and the greater Peoria area in particular to be successful going forward. And ideally, if we could, we want to see greater Peoria and central Illinois be another strong region of innovation, such as what people now understand that stretch of Southern California to be from San Francisco down to San Jose, right? And there are very many cities down there that are vibrant communities that have enjoyed the benefits of innovation. And I think it's not out of the realm of imagination to think that over the next 30, 40 years, if we are successful in what we want to do, that we could replicate some aspects of that Silicon Valley type environment to this region, and talk about an innovation corridor that stretches from, let's say, University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana in the east through Normal, Bloomington to Greater Peoria, all the way out to the Quad Cities, where we can all collaborate with each other, each one of us focusing on the type of innovation that's founded on the strengths in each of these different areas. So, for instance, Bloomington Normal is a city that is founded on services, and so there could be a lot of service innovation that could be ongoing in there that could tie into the more manufacturing, hospital, agricultural, and hopefully autonomous mobility capabilities that are in the central Illinois area.
State Farm has got to have an interest in autonomous vehicles because of the industry that they're involved with.
Absolutely, yes.
It's not necessarily going to go away, but it's certainly going to change.
Yes.
So that's another one. If someone is watching this or listening to this that wants to either get in touch with you or offer some ideas or say, how can I get involved? What should they do? Go to your website?
Yes, we have a website, www.nexmobi.org, that has information more about Nexmobi and our partners. I would encourage people to take a look at it. It is a website that will be further refined and added to as we go forward, but it is up. And in the website, there is a contact us link where you can sign up for inclusion and a list of folks that are interested in hearing more about our activities going forward. And we will be sharing news and updates as we go forward in the form of newsletters and tweets and so on and so forth.
Well, I know we're fascinated with it because I think, and I'm not saying this just because I like to write stories, but this is a very exciting period right now.
Absolutely,
in
yes.
the Peoria area. So it behooves people to take advantage of that. Well, Eng Seng Loh, thank you so much for coming on and sharing, because we're going to follow what happens with Nexmobi and Peoria, and let people know, and kind of. I got to say one last thing, and that's this. I've said this before here, so people are probably already rolling their eyes. But if you remember, I'm always anticipating as an audience that actually remembers things I've said, but that's probably just wishful thinking. But when they had the program, and I think the library started it years ago, 15 maybe more, where they all did decorative pigs.
Okay.
Around the community. Caterpillar had a pig, this company had one, library had one, and it was in their own way. Well, I'm suggesting we do it with robots. Little robots everywhere around the community. You modify it to you. Now, I'm sure autonomous stuff, they got it made. I can only imagine the car kind of robot they would have. But anyway, I'll just share that with you, no charge, because I need something to get out there anyway. But anyway, you're not beholding to that.
Well, thank you, Steve. That's a suggestion that we'll definitely be looking at.
Well, thank you, Eng Seng Loh, and thanks to Matt Dayhoff, who gets this thing out on Facebook and gets everyone hooked up on the big old internet. We'll see you next time on Tarter Sauce.